Hello everybody, hope all is well. So we're going to continue with Indisputable Truth book series. I think we're on part 6 of the series. We basically we got through the sections of, how do you know God exists? And then once you know God exists, there must be a religion, which religion's from God. Now we're examining all the different religions. We're up on Christianity. Last class we talked about the first, we said that the idea that if a book has mistakes in that book, it can be from God. If God's perfect and you see a book and the book has basic errors in it, that can't be that book is from God because God doesn't make mistakes. And even if you want to say, oh, God gave the book and later on these mistakes came, people changed it, then if you see one mistake, how do you know everything else is not a mistake, right? It already puts doubt on the whole book. So we're going through Christianity, and we said the idea that there's something called the Old Testament, which is the Jewish Bible, and then the New Testament. And we said the idea that the New Testament, which is basically part 2, can't contradict part 1, which is the Old Testament, the Torah. So if the Christians, whatever they say in part 2, they can't contradict part 1 because they believe in part 1 themselves. So the New Testament can't contradict the Old Testament, which is the Torah. So we said in the first mistake that we found in the New Testament, in the Christian Bible, not the Old Testament, but the New Testament, is the idea that basically, according to the New Testament, God, in order to be the Mashiach, we said what? That you have to be a descendant of King David. And the New Testament goes on and on explaining that Jesus is a descendant of King David, right? Through Joseph. And then 2 seconds later, it says what? That no, Joseph never took part in Jesus' conception. Even though Joseph might be a descendant of King David, but he never took part in the conception. God impregnated Mary, right? So God is the father, right? And Mary is the mother. So with that being said, can God be a descendant of King David? Because in order to be Messiah, you have to be a descendant of King David. So we see from there that the New Testament contradicted itself. It said in order to be Messiah, you have to be a descendant of King David. And 2 seconds later, it brought the lineage for Jesus, but it said God is the father. So obviously, we see from there. So if you want to get more info on that, see part 1. So now let's go to disproof. I don't like to say proof, but disproof number 2. Okay, of how you know the New Testament, that Christianity cannot be from God and is a man-made religion, and God never gave it. So imagine a friend claims, and I'm reading it inside. Imagine a friend claims that he received a book from God, and upon examining his book, you read that the book states that the Eiffel Tower is in Los Angeles. So you get a book, the book says the Eiffel Tower is in Los Angeles. Your friend says this book is from God, and now you go and you read the book and it says the Eiffel Tower is in Los Angeles. Would you base your entire life on this book and live by its instructions? A rational person would not. As a mistake so fundamental as such makes it clear that the book was not God-given, but rather man-made. So again, it's obvious. Someone's coming with the book and he's saying this book is from God, and the book says such a basic mistake that even a 5-year-old will never make such a mistake. The Eiffel Tower is in Los Angeles. Everyone knows the Eiffel Tower is in Paris, right? Paris, France. Never. So if someone's claiming their book is from God, then you obviously know something is up here. So think of this example. Now let me show you the parallel in the New Testament. Interestingly, if you were to read the New Testament, you would see that it says that the burial place of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is in the city of Nablus, Shechem. That's what it says in the book of Acts. However, so in the New Testament, it says the city of where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are buried is in Shechem, in Nablus, right? However, if you read the Old Testament, it says in Genesis, it clearly states that the Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the forefathers, are buried in the city of Hebron. In fact, today the city of Hebron is the most famous tourist site in Israel, where people from all over the world come to the cave of the patriarchs. It is the universally accepted burial place of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Now the question is, what happened to God in the New Testament? Does he not remember where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were buried? So again, it's very simple. They're buried in Shechem, and that's what the Old Testament says. Okay, they're buried in Hebron. And the New Testament says they're buried in Shechem, Nablus. Contradiction. If the New Testament is a continuation of the Old Testament, you can't contradict the Old Testament. It doesn't make sense. right? God doesn't make mistakes. When God wrote part 1, he didn't forget in part 2 what he said. In addition, the New Testament says that Abraham bought the burial plot from the sons of Hamor, son of Shechem, in the city of Nablus. But if we want to read the Old Testament, it clearly says that Abraham bought the burial plot from Ephron the Hittite. So imagine, the Torah is basically telling you that when Abraham bought the land to bury, right, he didn't buy it from Shechem, right? He didn't buy it from that person, the sons of Hamor, son of Shechem. He bought it from Ephron the Hittite. It clearly, you see that there's another contradiction, right? The New Testament got it wrong. For 1,300 years before the New Testament came on the scene, there was an undisputed tradition about Hebron and Ephron. That Hebron is the place where they're buried, and Ephron is the one who sold the plot of land to Abraham. How did it suddenly change? Is it possible that in a book that claims to be the Word of God, that there would be such errors? Of course not. People wrote the New Testament, and people, as intelligent as they may be, can make mistakes. It takes a tremendous amount of time and effort to write such a book, and therefore if a person doesn't remember what he wrote a week ago, especially when all the content is made up, it is easy to make such mistakes. So you see from there, such a basic mistake shows you what? If you see mistakes in a book, it shows you the book is not divine, meaning the book is not from God. It's man-made. That's okay. So that's proof number 2. Proof number 3. There are over 150,000 textual variations of the New Testament, meaning different texts. One text will say this is spelled that way. Another text will say this is spelled that way. One text will say this. Another text will say this event happened in another place. On the other hand, the Torah, the Jewish Bible, which has existed for over 1,300 years prior to the New Testament, was even written. It is still to this day the exact same text with no other variations. Okay, in fact, according to Jewish law, a scribe must copy a new Torah from an existing Torah scroll, letter for letter, meaning the Torah scroll cannot be written by heart. Therefore, even if one letter is different from the original text, then the Torah scroll is not considered to be valid. Incredibly, the Jews were able to maintain the same text even though all the nations were pursuing the Jews to destroy them and their Torah. Additionally, throughout the course of history, the Jews have been dispersed all around the world with limited contact with one another, and eventually the Jews, finally united together in Israel after 2,000-year exile. They all brought with them their ancient Torah scrolls that they use in their countries. Again, 2,000 years apart. And all the Jews came together. Upon comparing the texts, they were all found to be exactly the same. When comparing each country's Torah scrolls, everyone checked and saw all 304,805 letters of the Torah were the exact same. This is unbelievable, as there was a lack of proper communication throughout this time period. There were obviously no internet or media, and the Jews had to write the Torah manually with feather and ink. However, the New Testament has given birth to more than 150,000 different textual variations during the same time. Meaning, to just summarize everything, the Torah, the Jews, being dispersed, being persecuted, being scattered all over the world. The same text we had 3,300 years ago, we kept the same till this day. Okay, the Jews have the same Torah. The New Testament, which came 1,300 years after. Okay, way after. Not only, and again, it's not like I don't think the Christians are ever being persecuted. I don't ever think they're the ones persecuting, not being persecuted, right? They weren't being persecuted, they're persecuting. And even with that being said, we had one text all these years for 3,000. They had 150,000 different texts. Okay? Now, additionally, the New Testament texts have also been completely modified. As we know, there are different dates, names, missing parts, and various spelling mistakes. We know that the New Testament was manually written over 2,000 years ago. Many copying mistakes happened for 1,400 years until the era of the printing press. And now, there are many different textual variations. The Torah, on the other hand, has always had the same text. There are even some scholars that say the New Testament text was purposely altered over time. If we do not know which text is the original, then how can anyone rely on it? It could be that a belief followed by religiously by Christians is actually not accurate. How can we really know if the reading of the text is correct if so many alterations have occurred over the centuries? One word can completely distort the meaning of the text. The various texts show that even the New Testament even if it was divinely inspired, as the Christians claim, the original text has been lost since there are so many different variations. Meaning what? like we said, there's mistakes in it, fine. But even if you don't say there's mistakes and you want to say God gave it, right? God forbid, Jews don't believe that. But let's say even if the Christian wants to say God gave it, guess what? There's so many different thousands of variations of the text, 150,000 of them, that you don't even know which one's right and which one's wrong. And you can't rely on it. Because I told you, if a book has one mistake, then already you could doubt every other part of the book. They don't have an oral tradition. They don't have oral Torah explaining everything. They just have the written text. That's it. We have an oral Torah. We have a written and we have an oral Torah. We have both. So the idea is what? That the fact that there's so many texts that it's lost. And even if they had the truth, it's lost by now. But the point is that obviously it's just another add-on to the idea that it's not sustainable. Okay, number 4. There are 4 main prophecies that are supposed to be fulfilled when the Mashiach comes, the Messiah comes, and Jesus, whom the Christians believe to be the Messiah, has not fulfilled even one of them. Okay? So, meaning, if you want to be Messiah, you want to be Mashiach, you have to have these prophecies. If you don't have one, if you didn't fulfill these prophecies, you're not Messiah, you're not Mashiach. Okay, the first prophecy is that when the Mashiach comes, all the exiled Jews will be gathered back into Israel. That's what it says in the book of Ezekiel. And if you look back at history in the time of Jesus, what happened? The opposite happened. Instead of the Jews they're all scattering. Instead of being united and coming back to Israel, the Jews went into exile. That's one thing he didn't fulfill. Okay, number 2. The second prophecy is that the knowledge of God will fill the world. That's what it says in Isaiah. Which again, Jesus did not fulfill. In reality, because of so much persecution and exile by the Romans, right? Knowledge of God, and Jesus lived in the time of the Romans. So because they were exiling us and persecuting us and spreading us, knowledge of God and observance of His commandments and of the Torah were diminished during Jesus' life. So instead of making the wisdom of God fill the world, He made the opposite happen. And look today, dude. Today, do most people, keep the Torah? Do most people are closer to God? No. Even a lot of people became Christians, but I guess, again, they're not keeping God's commandments. They're not keeping the 7 laws of Noah, right? They just believe, they're all united with just basically belief, not in action. So, and again, a lot of them don't even believe oral Torah. That's another thing. They don't believe the Torah, they don't believe in the 7 laws of Noah. That's very important. The non-Jews have to keep the 7 laws of Noah. And they have to keep it not because they're logical, because God commanded it through Moses for the non-Jews to keep it. So just like we keep the Torah because God told Moses what for us to do, they have to keep the 7 laws of Noah because God told Moses. But they don't do that. So again, we see that the world's far away from that reality. The third prophecy, which Jesus didn't fulfill, was to resurrect the Jews from the dead. That's what it says in Daniel. And the opposite happened during the time of Jesus. The Jews were murdered because of persecution. And we saw throughout Jewish history that Jews were brutally murdered by Christians who claimed to be believers in the teachings of Jesus. Meaning, Jesus actually, because of him, many Jews died because people killed Jews. Christianity killed many, many Jews in history. Additionally, the Jews were never resurrected from the dead. Okay, there was no resurrection. Okay, now fourth prophecy that that the Messiah is supposed to fulfill, that Jesus didn't fulfill, was to build a temple, the Bet HaMikdash, what it says in the book of Ezekiel. And guess what? Around Jesus, the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed. And for the past 2,000 years, we still don't have the third Bet HaMikdash, the third temple. It hasn't been rebuilt. So, summary of Christianity. We clearly see from these examples that Jesus cannot have been the Messiah because he did not fulfill any of the 4 main messianic prophecies that the Bible tells us about. In conclusion, after looking over the New Testament, the numerous mistakes and contradictions found inside clearly show us that the book was written by humans, meaning it was not divinely inspired and not by God. So what do we see from there? Strike out. If you told me put my money on what religion could be on God, if God gave religion, which religion would be from God, right? I wouldn't put my money into Christianity because of the reasons that we said. Okay, fine. Islam. Okay. Islam began so we're going through all the religions and we're showing which religions, because of the mistakes in the religions, can't be from God. And like I said, if there's mistakes, the religion can't be from God. So let's check out Islam. Islam began approximately 2,000 years after Judaism and about 500 years after Christianity. Islam starts with the story of a man named Muhammad who was born approximately in the year 570 CE in the Arabian city of Mecca. One day he claimed that the angel of God, the angel Gabriel, came gave him the Quran. The Quran is the holy book of the Muslims, which they claim is the word of God. It is broken up into 114 chapters called surahs. The Muslims believe that Muhammad was the last prophet chosen by God after all the prophets. The Muslims also believe that Jesus was a prophet, and he's mentioned many times in the Quran. Okay. Furthermore, similar to the New Testament, the Quran never claimed that the Jewish Bible is incorrect. On the contrary, it actually claims that the Jewish Bible, the Torah, is from God, as you see in Surah 3, verse 3. Moreover, in the Quran, we find 31 instances where the Jewish people are called the people of the book. Even Muhammad called the Jewish people the people of the book. Okay? Muhammad just made the claim that the God gave, in addition to the Bible, he gave something called the Quran. In fact, if you read the Quran, you would see the major parts of it discuss many important historical events in Jewish history. Meaning the Quran talks about, you see the Quran has all the stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, David, all these people, right? All these great people in Jewish history. It talks because, again, it's a part 2. They claim it's a part 2. Okay, once again, mistakes in a book point to the fact that the book cannot be divine, cannot be from God. God is perfect and God does not make mistakes. The Quran itself testifies to this idea that mistakes in a book point to the fact that the book cannot be from God. As the verse says in the Quran, if it had been from any other than Allah, than God, they would have found within it much contradictions and inconsistencies. Surah 4, verse 82. Meaning the Muslims themselves admit that if there's mistakes and there's contradictions and inconsistencies, it can't be from God. Therefore, if we were to examine the Quran and find many mistakes and inconsistencies, we can be confident that the Quran was the work of man and not God, and therefore not binding on us. Because they claim, why is it binding on mankind to keep the Quran? Because it's from God. But if you disprove and you show that the Quran is not from God and it's made by just human beings, then therefore it's not binding on us. We don't have to observe what the Quran says. Again, not to say, God forbid, that a Muslim or a Christian or anybody bad. We're not trying to put anybody down here. We're just trying to, as Jews, get to the point whether or not, or as just anybody, regardless of whether you're Jewish or not. We're trying to get to the point, is this religion from God? That's it. We're not trying to put anybody down. We're just trying to get to the truth. We're trying to figure out what's right based off logic and common sense. Okay, fine. Here are a few examples of the many mistakes in the Quran. Okay, let's go. In the third edition of Indisputable Truth, it's page 29. Okay. In the Quran, okay, let's go. Disproof number 1. In the Quran, it says that Pharaoh had a meeting with Haman. According to the Quran, Pharaoh asked Haman to build him a tower that reaches the heavens so that he may see the God of Moses. It says that in Surah 40, chapter 40, verse 36 to 37. That basically what? Pharaoh tells Haman to build him a tower so he can see the God of Moses. In addition, the Quran says that Pharaoh, Haman, and their soldiers were deliberate sinners. However, as we mentioned clearly in the Old Testament, written over 1,000 years before Muhammad's birth, we say what? What did the Torah say? The Jewish Bible. It says that Haman was a high official during the time of King Ahasuerus, around 356 BCE. Right? Haman lived approximately 950 years after the Egyptian Pharaoh who lived during the time of Moses, as discussed in the Jewish Bible. The point here is that Pharaoh and Haman could have never seen each other. The person who wrote the Quran, made a great mistake in the correct chronological order of the generations, and he thought that Pharaoh and Haman lived at the same time. If the Quran is truly the word of God, could it really be that God can make such a critical mistake? Meaning the Quran is basically saying Haman and Pharaoh had a meeting. But Haman and Pharaoh can never have a meeting because they lived 950 years apart from each other. You see what I'm saying? Imagine you say George Washington and Trump met each other. You read a book. The book, you're claiming the book is from God, and it claims that Trump or Biden, whatever, met with George Washington. Okay? And that guy says, okay, follow my book. Would you ever believe his book is from God? Why not? Why not? Maybe Trump met, Trump or Biden met George Washington. No, because they live 950 years apart. It's a mistake. It's obviously a clear mistake, right? maybe Pharaoh and Haman, they make a joke. Maybe they met in hell, but in real life, they didn't meet each other. Right? They're both evil people. But look at footnote number 44. Some say that the surah in the Quran is referring to a different Pharaoh. Therefore, how can we state that for sure that this is the Pharaoh who lived at the time of Moses? So that's what some people who are some Muslims, they answer, oh, there's not a disproof because maybe it's a different Pharaoh. So what's the answer? The answer can be found in Surah 28, chapter 28, verse 4, where it clearly says that this Pharaoh oppressed the Jews, slaughtered their male newborns, and let the female newborns live. This is exactly what the Jewish Bible says the Pharaoh in the time of Moses did. Therefore, it must be the same Pharaoh. So Muslims claim, oh, Pharaoh didn't meet Haman. This was a different Pharaoh. But if you look at the same verses in the Quran, it shows that it was the Pharaoh. It's the Pharaoh in the time of Moses who killed the newborn babies, right? As the Bible, as the Torah says, right? So that's how you know it's the same Pharaoh. So if anyone wants to bring that, try to take down that disproof. Okay, fine. So that's mistake number 1 in the Quran. Mistake number 2 in the Quran, which is crazy. When I saw this, I was going nuts. I'm like, there is no way someone can make such a mistake like that. Okay, according to the Jewish Bible, so we need a little bit of background. Moses and Aaron were brothers and had one sister named Miriam. Okay, they all lived approximately 3,300 years ago. Their father and mother were Amram and Yocheved. Okay. Additionally, in history, there was also another famous Miriam, better known as Mary. Mary, in Hebrew, Miriam, was the mother of Jesus. Okay? Mary lived approximately 2,000 years ago. Okay, so now, like I said before, the Quran believes in Jesus, believes that Jesus was a prophet. So the Quran talks about Jesus and his mother Mary. It talks about this whole story. So you're going to see the Quran talking about it. So let's go in the Quran. In the Quran, it says, quoting, this is Surah chapter 19, verse 27-28, for people who want to look it up. It says in the Quran, "O Mary," talking about the mother of Jesus, "you have certainly done a thing so unusual. O sister of Aaron, your father was not a man of evil, nor was your mother immoral." Okay? The Quran then goes to say that Mary, the mother of Jesus, is the daughter of Amram. Surah chapter 66, verse 12. So let's take it back. If according to the Quran, Mary, the mother of Jesus, right, because it's talking about here Mary, meaning the fact that she gave birth, she had a virgin birth. That's the context of this verse in the Quran, right? So if according to the Quran, Mary, the mother of Jesus, is both the sister of Aaron and and Moses, and the daughter of Amram, okay? Because the Quran said, Mary, sister of Aaron, and then later on it says, daughter of Amram. We know Moses' father is Amram. Moses and Aaron and Miriam had a father Amram, and whatever, right? So we see that, let's go back. So if according to the Quran, Mary, the mother of Jesus, is both the sister of Aaron and Moses and the daughter of Amram, that means according to the Quran, Moses is the uncle of Jesus. You see that? You see why? Because so let's take it back. It kind of gets a little bit confusing. Mary, or we say Miriam, which we're talking about Jesus' mother. Quran says her brother is Aaron, and her father is Amram. Okay? And Moses is the brother of Aaron and the son of Amram. Okay? Therefore, Moses is sisters with Miriam of the Bible, of the New Testament, and therefore Jesus was the son of Mary. Therefore, Jesus' uncle is Moses. Okay, good. Now tell me where something seems funny here. Okay? But this is an obvious mistake because Amram, Moses, Aaron, and Miriam lived 1,300 years before Jesus was even born. Moses lived 3,300 years ago. Jesus lived 2,000 years ago. So how can Moses be the uncle of Jesus when they lived 1,300 years apart? You see what I'm saying? Additionally, in the book of Bamidbar, Numbers, it clearly tells us that Miriam died. So one can't simply say that she lived until the time of Jesus. Once again, it is clear to us that the author of the Quran mixed up the characters of the Bible. Right? Part 2, the Quran contradicts part 1. In this case, mixing up the identities of the two famous Miriams. Miriam, the sister of Moses, and mixing it up with Miriam, the mother of Jesus. This is another clear mistake by the authors of the Quran, a mistake that God cannot make. You see that? You get it? They lived 1,300 years apart. How can Moses be the uncle of Jesus who lived 1,300 years later? It's not possible. That's shocking. I don't know how a Muslim could read that and not be like, what the heck? How does that make sense? It's total. And like we said, the Quran itself said if there's mistakes, it can't be from God. Like I said, quoted before. Therefore, you see a clear mistake. Okay. That's disproves of Christianity, disproves of Islam. Now this is kind of what we're going to read next is going to be a disproof of both of them combined. Okay, the Christians and Muslims both claim that the Jews were the chosen people, but God left them. They claim that God chose them to be the new chosen people. However, this is not possible. Okay, however, this is not possible as the Torah itself testifies in multiple verses. In Samuel 1, chapter 12, verse 22, for the sake of his great name, God will never abandon his people, seeing that God undertook to make you, the Jews, his people. That's one verse. Another verse, it says in Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 26, verse 44 to 45, it says, yet even if when they, the Jewish people, are in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them or spurn them to destroy them, to cancel my covenant with them. For I, the Lord, Hashem, am their God. I will remember them I will remember in their favor the covenant with the ancients, with Avram, Isaac, and Jacob, whom I freed. And Moses and everybody else, whom I freed from the land of Egypt in the sight of the nations to be their God. I, the Lord. God, when it says I, the Lord, Ani Hashem, that's like God's approval. That's like God's signature. And it says in Ezra chapter 9, verse 9, though we are his servants, God has not abandoned us in our bondage. Even though they're exiled, God didn't abandon them. So we clearly see from here that the Christians and Muslims, when they came, hey, God left the Jews, we're the new chosen people, right? It can't be, because God is not going to contradict himself. In part 1, he says, I'll never abandon the Jews. The Torah will always apply. That's it. In conclusion, through the many mistakes and contradictions we see in Christianity and Islam's God-given books, we are able to conclude that these religions were in fact not God-given at all, and therefore not binding on us. Religion can only be true if it was given by God and not by mere humans. Of course, most Christians and Muslims are just nice, normal people. We're not saying not trying to put anybody down. Our purpose is not to talk badly about them. Instead, the purpose was to examine the truth or falsehood of their claims. There are many more mistakes and contradictions found in both the New Testament and Quran, which we did not mention here. This list is endless. And it says here, for more disproofs of these religions and other cults, please check out the YouTube channel called the Indisputable Truth Yeshiva and look at the playlist called Refutations of Major World Religions and Cults to see more disproofs, to see more of different religions and different cults. Our goal is to search for the truth and figure out which religion is truly God-given and point out those religions that are clearly not. Again, not to put anyone down, not to say who's good and who's bad. This has nothing to do with that. This is out of full respect. This is just a logical search for truth, and we're trying to figure out what's right, and we're trying to see where do we put our money in. Do we put our money in something that has mistakes in, or do we put our money in that's something that doesn't have mistakes and actually has evidence for its existence? And we see from here that Christianity and Islam is not the place to put our money in. And if we want to risk our, dedicate our lives to, following a religion and and that being the true religion, these are not the places we want to put our energy into, because it's man-made. And if man made it, why should I keep it? Who's man for me to listen to him? I don't care. Your grandfather, your grandma, your friend, some random guy made a new religion, so I have to keep it because he made a religion. I don't care what he says. I want to do whatever the creator of the universe said. Okay? And obviously, this book is going to go into the proofs of Judaism and stuff, but it's important to, first understand going through other religions, because it makes you appreciate your religion. It makes you appreciate Judaism. When you see Judaism has all these evidence and proofs and so much logic and reasoning, and it's not just a blind leap of faith, like these religions have absolutely no proof. It's just a leap of faith. Ask any Muslim or any Christian or any other religion, how do you know you're true? It's a leap of faith. That's the whole religion. But when you see Judaism is totally the opposite of that, it just changes your perspective. You know what I'm saying? and makes you realize like, wow, the greatness of Judaism. Sometimes you have to, go down to appreciate, the greatness of something. You're on a mountain, you don't appreciate the tallness of the mountain until you're down below and you're seeing its great view from the bottom, right? Okay, fine. Now we're going to Buddhism and other religions and cults. So the reason why we write other religions and cults is you'll see that the reason that it's written like that is because there's a lot of different reasons for it. But the idea, Buddhism, let's go through these religions. Okay, like many religions, Buddhism is a belief system that is not falsifiable. The beliefs could be very well true or they could not be. It's more of an outlook, a collection of teachings and enlightenment than a rational religion. That's its weakness. There is no logical, rational, empirical evidence to back up the claims and no reason to take Buddha as an authority. By the way, the same idea applies to Christianity and Islam as well as other purely faith-based religions. There's no logical, rational, or empirical evidence to back up their claims. Okay? Just because Buddha claims, he reached enlightenment and seems to be very relaxed and a compassionate person, it's still not enough evidence to unquestionably trust his word. Even if following his path can sometimes provide peace of mind and compassion, it doesn't mean that his core philosophy is the truth of reality. All it may mean is that he found some good techniques to find peace and deal with suffering in life. Most importantly, Buddha did not make any claim that God spoke to him or gave him anything. Therefore, there's no reason to follow him. As we said before, we're only interested in religions that make a claim to have a connection with the Creator through revelation, and we're not interested in man-made religions. Meaning what? Number one, there's no evidence for Buddhism. It's not even I don't even know how to say it. When I debated the Buddhist monk, this was my whole argument, and that's why I feel like the people from the audience, who were there, understood from the beginning. I don't think it was a debate because he had nothing to debate. There was nothing. He never made a claim that God gave his religion, that Buddhism came from God, that this is the right religion, that this is this is how you fulfill the purpose in life. He made no claim. All his claim is, guys, I have a new program and technique. Imagine one of these Tony Robbins guys, inspirational speakers, comes with a course. He makes a whole course. Guys, I'm going to teach you guys how to not be stressed. Guys, I'm going to teach you guys how to be, make more money, right? That's basically what the Buddha was. The Buddha didn't come and say, God gave me this, God gave me that, this is the purpose, this is that. He didn't even make a claim whether he believes in God or not, right? You could be a Buddhist and not believe in God. It has nothing to do with that. It's not, that's why you could call it a religion because people follow it, but it's not really, there's no claims to truth. It's just a nice technique. It's a workshop that somebody came up with of good techniques, good wisdom, and nice teachings to enhance your life, right? Like Tony Robbins when he writes his books. And imagine someone says, oh, Tony Robbins, I love your book, sick book. Okay, and let me make this a new religion. We have to bow down, make a big statue of Tony Robbins, bow down to it, pray to it, follow Tony Robbins' teaching, and make a religion out of that. That means that religion is true. That means that religion is from God. There's no question. There's no connection here. It's some nice teachings, whatever. And obviously, according from a Judaism perspective, there's obviously aspects of Buddhism were problematic. The idea of bowing down to Buddha, and I know not all Buddhists bow down to statues, but there's certain aspects that are have some type of idol worship involved with it. Certain Buddhist methods and whatever things they do. But the idea is that if you really believe in something, you believe something is true, you're not going to put your energy and waste it into somewhere that there's no really nothing going for it. It's really just nothing going for it. Hundreds of million people are Buddhists. Okay, they call them whatever they want, but there's nothing to the religion. There's nothing to it to follow and to believe in. Now that was with Buddhism, and it's funny, when I was talking to the Buddhist monk, he was like, yeah, Buddhism is all about being compassionate, Buddhism is all about being helping others and this. I'm like, yeah, if that's the case, why are you running to the mountains and hiding in the mountains all day? I don't see you guys changing the world. I don't see you guys, look at the Jewish people, look how much we do for the world. We have organizations for everything. We give the most charity. The number one religion for giving charity is, percentage wise, is Jewish people. We give the most charity. We do the most acts of kindness. We got the most Nobel prizes. We product, as a nation, percentage wise. Obviously, there's so many other nations and so many people did stuff, but per a percentage, based off the numbers we have, we've done the most to the world. We've done the most. We're the most productive. They say the four most legendary people in society who changed the world in the past century are Albert Einstein, Jew, Sigmund Freud, big psychologist, Jew, Karl Marx, Jew, right? He started communism, and Richard, what's his name? I'm blanking out on his name. Richard, what's his name? The guy who started evolution. The guy who came up. Whatever, I'm blanking out on his name, okay? They say 3 of them were Jewish and 1 of them was wrong. Right? The guy who started Darwin. Okay, yeah, sorry, I blanked out on the name. But the idea is what? That Buddhists claim, it's all about being compassionate. And I'm like thinking to myself, what do you guys do for the world? What are you doing? Hiding to the mountains, running away from life, running away from having a family, having kids, raising people to be leaders. You guys are not doing that. You guys are not producing that. But whatever. That's my take on it, of why I think it's just not really, and there's not anything going for a person to believe and follow as a religion. Okay, fine. But now in regards to every other religion, because obviously we don't have the time, we don't have the energy, there's tens of thousands of religions and cults. We're not going to go through every single religion and cult and start, seeing whether this is from God or not, right? The religion, like we said in the beginning, the religions that claim that they got something from God, we'll look into them. That's why we looked into Christianity, that's why we looked into Islam. They claim God gave them. Any other religion or cult that doesn't claim they have a connection to God, don't believe in God, don't claim God gave them anything, we say that in Hebrew, Chazak Baruch, we're done with you. We don't want to pay any attention towards you because there's nothing going for you. Okay, fine. Now, on page 31 in the 3rd edition, the way to refute an unfalsifiable religion is just to prove the veracity of the Torah, which means that any belief system that goes against the Torah simply cannot be true. This is the method we'll use to disprove all other religions that claim to be God-given. Okay? Judaism teaches that life is about connecting your soul to God, while Buddhism teaches the polar opposite. Since you have no soul, you should run away from the pleasure of this world, and it does not matter whether God exists or not. Once Buddha's teachings or any other religion or cult, which have no evidence to support their veracity, comes up against a system which, with compelling rational evidence to support its claims, we can safely reject their authenticity and any connection to a higher being. So, the idea is what? Like I said before, any other religion, any other cult, we're not going to go through every religion and cult, right? Like I said, you could find evidence, and if you want more disproof for other religion, there's a rabbi named Rabbi Yehoshua Zitroni. He has a YouTube channel. He has a whole playlist called Divinity, and he goes through way more religions, all these stuff that we didn't mention, random religion cults, and a lot of different things that he goes over, like Sikhism and all that kind of stuff, whatever that we didn't mention, that are kind of, I think, somewhat monotheistic religions, the Baha'i religion, all this stuff, and he disproves all of them. But for now, the idea is once we prove Judaism, you automatically disprove everything else, because Judaism has a whole system of belief and a whole system of proofs and all that stuff. And once we get there, we automatically think. So let's end off there. Next time we'll start on the section of Judaism of